How much effort do you need in your organization to discover one obscure workflow that is quietly burning millions? Today, we're exploring how task mining teamed with autonomous AI agents might deliver savings big enough to move the CFO's dial. My name is Alexander Nevsky, and this is Innovation Tales.
Navigating change, one story at a time, we share insights from leaders tackling the challenges of today's digital world. Welcome to Innovation Tales, the podcast exploring the human side of digital transformation.
That invisible workflow siphoning millions doesn't vanish with another slide deck. It takes data you can see and action you can trust. Tuhin Chakraborty lives at that intersection. As CEO and co-founder of Mimica AI, he turns messy click streams into crystal clear process maps. With engineering stops at LinkedIn and Pandora and a patent for a supervised learning model, Tuhin knows how to convert AI hype into CFO-level ROI. Today he shares battle-tested tactics, where to start task mining pilots, how to prove value in weeks, and why pairing agents with human oversight will unlock sustainable scale in the future. If you're juggling stakeholder skepticism and budget pressure, this playbook is for you. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Tuhin Chakraborty. Tuhin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you could join. I'd like to start us off, as my listeners know by now, with a good story. You and your company specialize in task mining. Would you mind describing what that is, but from the perspective of one of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So task mining is a new technology that can make inferences about the work that people do on their computers using AI. So essentially what we do is record the clicks and keystrokes into the computer, and we use advanced machine learning and AI to process this data to determine what are the tasks and processes that people are working on, where are they spending their time, where are the best opportunities for automation and process improvement, and then we can generate these process maps that are used for process improvement and automation. So for example, we do a lot of work in the insurance industry, and one of the big insurance companies in the US is one of our customers. And essentially what they did is use Mimica to identify all of the different activities in the claims process. So this company spends $240 million a year on claims, and yet they have no idea how this money is spent. What are the different activities involved in the claims process? How much time is spent in each one? Where are the opportunities for process improvement and automation? And what they did is use Mimica to record 1,000 claims agents. And from those recordings, they were able to identify all of the different activities involved in the claims process and create productivity benchmarks for each activity. So now, for the first time, they're able to measure how is that $240 million breaking down across all the activities involved in the work. And one of the key insights that Mimica was able to identify for this customer is that claims involving a tow truck, so these are auto claims. So, when you have a car accident, you file a claim. Claims involving a tow truck take 30% longer to process than claims that don't.
That's unexpected. Why is that?
The reason it was happening was because the case management system that they used to process the claims, the workflow around claims that involved a tow was significantly more inefficient. The clicks and keystrokes required to execute that workflow and process a claim of that type took much longer than claims that did not involve a tow. And this was a new insight that was created for the company. And in this way, they thought of Mimica as a new category of business intelligence. And they got the product manager who owned the case management system to rebuild that workflow. And they were able to get the delta down by 80%, which resulted in about $5 million in savings.
Oh, that's an amazing story. And the way you're telling it, I think to me sounds the way that it would be experienced by the managers, the leaders, the executives of the company, that before they had no visibility and now they have this very precise, accurate breakdown of those 240 million. But what about the experience of the claim specialist that you were referring to? Doesn't it feel for them like a bit of an invasion of their privacy?
Now, the people that are involved in the process, they are active participants in this. So it's not a background recorder that sort of surreptitiously captures information while being hidden from the user. We actually put them at the center of the recording experience. And the reason is that every employee and really every person has something that they would rather be doing with their time. So that team has a remit, and that remit has certain activities that are probably more core to what that team is responsible for doing than these repetitive and mundane activities that they're forced to do on a daily or weekly basis. And the people that we record are often eager to participate in this recording process because Mimica enables this work to be taken off their plate. It enables the work to be automated. And this gives that individual or that team more time to work on the things that they would like to be working on. Now, in order to create an experience that protects their privacy, there are a number of controls that we put in place. One, the recorder always sits front and center on the person's desktop, so it's not hidden in the background. Two, it has a start, a stop, and a pause button on it. So the user is in complete control over what is being recorded and when. And they can turn it off at any time. If they're ever doing something unrelated to the work, they can simply pause the recorder and then resume it when they get back to their day-to-day activities. And then finally, and this is maybe the most critical point, Mimica anonymizes all the information that flows through the system. So there's absolutely no confidential or personally identifiable information that's captured. Things like password fields are never recorded. And in addition, names, emails, phone numbers, addresses, that sort of thing, all of that is stripped out of the recording. So when you look at the result in Mimica, you don't see any confidential information.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I wonder, you know, I've been in this business for a while. So before we had these automated ways of discovering a business process, we would have business analysts going around and asking people questions and drawing diagrams. And I think this is a bit different because it provides a level of, let's say, objective reality that was a bit hard to achieve because it was very often the case that every actor would see what was going on a bit from their own angle and not necessarily agree on where the time was wasted or not. So can you share any anecdote or any story that shows how at the personal level that transparency can be valuable?
There are many examples of this, but one that immediately comes to mind is some work that we did at a large telecommunications company. And it was the first time that we delivered a Mimica result to a customer, and the person receiving it actually got a little bit emotional when they saw the output. Mimica identified an automation opportunity that was a process that this person was working on. And essentially what the task was is that they had to take a spreadsheet of all the candidates that the recruiters were meant to reach out to, and they would break that spreadsheet down into 10 or 12 different smaller spreadsheets and essentially use that to distribute to the various recruiters. And we learned on that call that this individual had been doing that process every day for 1 hour a day for the last 15 years.
Wow.
For him, Mimica was a gift because it enabled the automation of a process that was very repetitive, very mundane, that he had spent a significant amount of time working on. And he was emotional about the fact that for the first time in 15 years, this work would be taken off his plate.
Crazy. So coming back to what I was saying about how it used to work with business analysts coming to model a business process before the advent of automated technologies like yours, there was a number of conversations that needed to happen for people to figure out what the current process, the as-is process was, and then discuss what the to-be should be. So can you maybe explain how that works with the data that Mimica compiles? I'm curious about how the model, first of all, make sense of all the signals that it's getting, because people are using their computers to do many things, and some of those things may not be related to the business process. But then how does it get to a point where the process actors actually start recognizing, oh, that is what we're doing today. And then from there, how do they start thinking about what should we change?
The traditional way of understanding processes is by interviewing people and asking them questions about the way that they work. So oftentimes you will be looking over somebody's shoulder. At one of our customers, they call them desk rides. So you're basically, shoulder surfing essentially and asking someone questions about the way that they work. You could be taking screen recordings and going home in the evening and reviewing them and manually creating these process maps. And as you go through the transformation journey, as you're making improvements to the process, you're doing that based on this anecdotal data. And the problem is that anecdotal data is rarely accurate. So people often misremember what they do. They mischaracterize the inefficiencies in the process. They over or underestimate the automatability. So in a word, they are biased about their own work. What Mimica does is provide a way to get to the source of truth, which is the data itself. So rather than relying on the person's anecdotes, you can put a recorder on somebody's computer. They control it, of course. The data is anonymized, of course. But from that, you can get really accurate information about what are the tasks and processes, how much time do they take, what do the process maps look like. And from there, your transformation journey is rooted in the data itself. And within the tool, you can actually model different scenarios. So you can see, okay, if we were to deploy, let's say, vanilla RPA, robotic process automation, to automate this process, what would the impact be? Or if we were to bring in an advanced technology like OCR or IDP or Agentic AI, how would that change the automation potential? What would that new process look like? Are there fewer steps that would need to be done, steps that can be eliminated, steps that can be optimized? So what does the to be process look like? All of that can be modeled within Mimica using the underlying data itself. And this is what we've seen time and time again be critical to companies for the success of the transformation.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned a number of solutions, let's say, to get to a to-be process, and I don't really want to spend too much time on the traditional stuff that's been around for a while, like RPA, but you've mentioned agentic automation. So how do you see this symbiosis between what you do in task mining and the possibilities that are becoming available with agentic automation?
Yeah, so task mining and agentic automation are inextricably linked. In fact, when we started Mimica, we built the company on the vision of a new type of automation, one that did not need to be explicitly programmed click by click, but rather could learn by observation. So in the same way that humans learn, it can watch what someone does, it can learn from it, and it can reproduce the task. And this is how we thought computers would be programmed in the future. In order to build this technology, the first thing that you need to build is the ability to interpret the work, recording clicks and keystrokes and deriving meaning from those clicks and keystrokes. And what we've built so far, which is an analytics tool, is really just the first step on that long-term journey. So we've gotten really good at understanding the clicks and keystrokes that people do, and we've created an analytics layer on that. And we've put a ribbon around that product and we sell it in the market today. But really all the technology that we built is in service of the automation vision, where we want to take that learning of the clicks and keystrokes and play them back on the computer. And that will be the final step on our product roadmap.
I see. Very interesting. Might have pushed you into using some of the technical terms, but we didn't really define them. So what is agentic automation from your perspective? And maybe just retell that description, but from the point of view of a business leader, like why should they care? How would that look like in the future once you have that capability?
So that's a great question. The definition of agentic automation is still forming in many ways. But from Mimica's perspective, agentic automation is one that does not need any specialized skill set to build. So typically when you want to automate something, you need an automation developer. This is a specialized skill set, someone who has trained in writing computer code, and they may have learned to build robotic process automation, which is one type of automation, or they may have learned to build Python automation or Excel macro automation. These are all different types of automation that are used to automate different processes. But in all of these cases, you need someone specialized who knows how to write code and has trained in building that specific type of automation. When the development of automation is bottlenecked by this specialized skill set, it really caps the value that can be created from it because these developers are in short supply. In our view of the future, with agentic automation, you will not require a specialized skill set in order to build the automation. But in fact, anybody will be able to deploy an automation simply by demonstrating their process to the agent, and the agent will be able to learn from it and reproduce it. So what this means for a leader in the organization, if you look at the before and the after. So before, you would deploy a business analyst who would interview the person who's doing the process, and they would manually create a process map. And that process map would then be given to an RPA developer who would use it to manually build an automation click by click. And that entire process from start to finish can take 6 months or more with all of these different people involved. In the Mimica world, you won't need a business analyst or an RPA developer. You will simply have the person that does the process and the Mimica recorder. The recorder will capture the process, it will generate a workflow, and then that workflow will automatically be used to power the automation. And in this way, we will automate the automation process.
That's a very ambitious vision. I like it. But if you don't mind playing devil's advocate for a minute here, isn't there part of the process that is not on the desktop? Instead, it's in the process actors' minds, right? The thinking that they're doing, the decision they're doing. Can you clarify how, in your vision, does that get captured somehow and automated, or is that, on the contrary, stuff that remains after the automation is complete?
I'm glad that you brought this up because this is the crux of the challenge in many ways, is how to deal with the decision making that the person does. And there's so many different types of decision, and you can categorize them by complexity. Now, in the simplest case, we talk about rules-based decisions. So that is, if the invoice is greater than 50,000, then it needs to be approved. It needs to go through an extra layer of approval. So that is a business rule that is going to be different from organization to organization. These business rules are unique to every organization. So the question is, can this rule be learned from the data? Our belief is yes, that if you observe this decision being made many times, and that sometimes path A is taken and sometimes path B is taken, and you correlate that with the underlying data in the process, then you can ultimately predict that it's a very high likelihood, let's say, that the amount of the invoice is contributing to the decision. And from that, you can ultimately derive a decision rule. Now, the same logic can be applied to more complex decisions as well. And we've seen with the latest advances in LLMs that they are capable of reasoning, taking data from different sources, unstructured sources, interpreting them, reasoning to ultimately take a decision on the right course of action. As these models become more sophisticated and their reasoning capabilities become more sophisticated, the complexity of the decisions that they will be able to take independently will also grow over time. Short answer to your question, yes, we believe that we can understand how the decisions are made, certainly for rules-based decisions today and for increasingly complex decisions over time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Where do you see Mimica's role in this evolution? Do you see like a specialized provider of the task mining, or I think you maybe have alluded to that you would take the company to provide the full spectrum of business process automation capabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you look today in the enterprise, the vast majority of the work is being done by people. In the future, you will still have work being done by people, but a lot of the work that's currently being done by people will be given over to agents. And you will also, alongside these people, have a large number of agents that are also working day and night to execute the work in the enterprise. Now, we see task mining as serving two functions. One, it's a layer on top of all the digital work happening in the company. And the goal is to make that work more efficient. Now, part of what we're doing by providing that analytics is helping the organization determine which aspects of that work to peel off into the agentic layer, right? So all the work today is being done by humans. Iteratively, we will give over more and more of that work to the agents. And Mimica will help identify what aspects of that work should be given over. And as the work that the humans are doing becomes more complex, the analytics that we provide will again become more sophisticated to give insights into how to make that creative work more efficient. And at the same time, our ambition is also to own the agentic layer and the transition between the two layers. So you can imagine in the future, you have for any given organization, an army of people that are doing work, an army of agents that are doing work, and Mimica is the kind of infrastructure layer on top of both that's transitioning work from human to agents more and more over time. And maybe someday we'll have a world where all the work is being done by agents and the humans are just all sitting on a beach somewhere. I think we're still a ways away from that, but we hope that Mimica will be running that work every step of the way.
Okay. For our listeners, I think a lot of them, this vision of sitting at the beach while all the work is being done by agents is probably a mixture of, obviously that would be cool, but also there is probably anxiety around that. So let's, before we conclude, try and provide some more practical short-term advice for business leaders. What would be the main key takeaway that you would want them to come away with from this conversation? Where's the first step, let's say, for them?
There's absolutely no doubt that the advent of LLMs, foundational models, ChatGPT, that technology is already capable of fundamentally changing the way that we work in the enterprise. There's absolutely no doubt that the advent of that technology has unlocked a completely new category of work that can be automated, and therefore a completely new level of efficiency that the organization can achieve. So the main question as a leader that you should be asking is not whether the technology can transform your business, but how. The first step to take is really to do a holistic assessment of all the manual work happening in your organization to determine what percentage of that work and which parts of it can be given over to an LLM or to an agent that can begin automating that work. So that's where we would recommend using Mimica, because at the click of a button, you can get a complete understanding of all the manual work happening in your organization, and you can instantly capture, map, and ultimately optimize those processes. And what Mimica will give you essentially is a roadmap for how to get from where you are today to that future vision of your enterprise, where a lot of that work, or as much of it as possible, has been given over to agents.
Makes sense. Get clarity, get visibility of all the work that happens first.
Exactly. And from that position, the answer for how to transform your enterprise, it will become self-evident, because you will see which aspects of the work can be automated as is, which ones will continue to be done by humans. And the next immediate vision, I think, for the enterprise is the world in which you have humans and agents working alongside each other to execute this process. So humans are going to continue to do the parts of the process that require intelligence and complex decision making. The agents are going to do the rote, mundane aspects of the work that can be done by a robot, essentially. And so your goal as the leader is to really understand your process and understand which components of it can be given to the agent and which will continue to be done by the human. And if you can understand the process in enough detail to understand where those handoffs should be and what that new sort of hybrid workforce looks like, then you can begin to execute on that vision.
Perfect. Very good advice. So as we're about to wrap up, I usually ask a couple of questions at the end. The first one is, what book, tool, or habit has made the most impact on you in the last 12 months?
It's going to sound cliche to say it, but the tool that has had the biggest impact on my life has definitely been ChatGPT. I use it for everything. There's probably no decision in the company that I make today without consulting ChatGPT. Its reasoning models. Whenever I am trying to solve a new problem, whenever I'm trying to think about a space that I'm unfamiliar with, I always use it as a starting point for my brainstorming. And even when it's incorrect, and it's not always correct, but even when it's incorrect, it always provides or brings something to the conversation that was not there before. So I would highly encourage everyone to become proficient in this tool. There's absolutely no doubt that it will increase your creativity, improve your productivity. Maybe I should be a salesperson for OpenAI.
Yeah, I think you should. Yes, definitely an LLM as a thinking partner is a great way of using this tool, of course. And then the last question, we've been talking about everything that is likely to change and your vision for that, but is there maybe one thing that you expect to remain constant in the next 10 years?
There is a lot of discussion right now about what the future of AI looks like. What I think will remain constant, and I feel very confident in this, is our reliance on people. So I joked earlier about a world where the humans are all sitting on a beach and the agents are doing the work, but it's not a vision that I truly believe in. I believe that people will always have a place in this world. And there are some sort of AI optimists, let's say, that believe that humans will be automated and not have anything left to do. And I disagree with that notion. And that's something that I think will absolutely remain constant in the next 10 years, regardless of all the advances that we see in AI.
You and me both. I also hope the same. Tuhin, thank you very much for this great conversation.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
What resonated the most in today's chat was Tuhin's insistence that numbers, not narratives, should drive automation. Capture the keystrokes, quantify the waste, then identify where planned agents could deliver undeniable payback. So how might you translate your next AI initiative into a metric the CFO actually champions? If you're ready to test the waters, Tuhin and the Mimica team offer a proof of concept assessment and a free CXO guide to data-driven cost cutting. The links, as always, are in the description. In the meantime, we'll have more exciting topics and guest appearances lined up, so stay tuned for more tales of innovation that inspire, challenge, and transform. Until next time, peace.
Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Tales. Get inspired, connect with other practitioners, and approach the digital revolution with confidence. Visit innovation-tales.com for more episodes. See you next time.